Otherwise, I think maybe we don't get it, but we're fine. Anyways, we're here. We're at Tankie Therapy. We have some friends we haven't seen in a while. We're excited to have them back. Joe, welcome back, our friend. We missed you. It is good to have you back. I'm going to play like the air horn sound. Boo, 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 boo. Joe's back. Because why don't you tell us you had a little bit of...
Yeah, I had a health scare. Got rushed in. Like I was told all of a sudden I have blockages in my heart, which I never thought I'd have, because my family doctor sent me for this checkup thinking, no, they're not going to find anything. And sure enough, they said, wow, these are dangerous blockages. You got to get a triple bypass. And then I get a triple bypass, and a month later, you're not supposed to fix me for decades, right? Like that's usually the story, right? I know people who've had this and they're good for decades. I have mine, and like a month later, I have a heart attack because it didn't work. And like the grafts, 2 of the 3 grafts they gave me clogged up immediately. It's just something that happens in a small percentage of cases. So yeah, so I spent a lot of time in hospitals, and got me thinking about a lot of things. When it just how far we've come in some ways, because when I was 3 years old, I was hospitalized for a double hernia operation. And it's weird because I never think about that. It's like a pretty traumatic thing for a 3-year-old to go through, right? To be separated from their family and operated on and stuff. And I really got me to thinking how mean the doctors and nurses were. I mean, really, I think about the way they treated me, and I think, wow, I was 3 years old. How do you do that to a 3-year-old? Like, how do you behave that way? And it was just, that was the way back then. It's a lot. I think even the parents even tolerated that stuff. They, just what they did to even in schools. That's what I remember, because I remember like kindergarten, grade 1, teachers could actually, punish you, use corporal punishment on you and stuff. And it seems like a 55-year-old memories, but I got thinking about that stuff. And then of course you think about Gaza. I mean, Gaza, how can you not be in a hospital bed in Canada and not think about what's going on in Gaza? I mean, I think in my hospital bed, what would it be like to have soldiers, roaming the halls, you're looking to kill people, hearing explosions and stuff. And you're just thinking it's traumatic enough what you're going through, wondering, well, how am I going to survive this? And then you have to you can't help but think about that. And think about the actual Zionists in our medical establishment, trying to get medical students fired, trying to get doctors fired for just expressing basic human views, basic civilized views that they're against genocide. So it's this it's kind of remarkable in the way that the way I was treated over the last few months was exemplary. I mean, I can't say enough about how kind and diligent, especially the nurses, because that's who you're dealing with when you're in a hospital 99% of the time. The doctors kind of come in and out, say a few things and take off. But the nurses are the ones who are doing all the work basically on you constantly, checking on you, and I had so many of them. There's so many nurses, you're constantly dealing with different names, different faces, but they're without exception, incredibly kind, incredibly diligent. Just what a contrast from where I was 55 years ago, where I'm thinking like, wow, I'm glad most of those people are probably dead or not practicing medicine anymore. It was just so bad. So it's just so weird that we live in a society where we can have certain aspects of our society can be civilized, can be very civilized, very humane, especially if you're white professional class person like me. I mean, there are still horror stories in our healthcare system with Indigenous peoples. I wrote about this in Substack, and there's really a lot of examples of the care that Indigenous people are in, because they're in remote communities, they're underserviced anyway. And of course, just the institutional racism and everything else, where people get die in emergency rooms because he's probably drunk, or they're just making it up, or just all sorts of horrible stuff that still happens today. But I don't doubt that there's been progress. I just think of my own experience in hospitals. We have these humane aspects to our society, these civilized aspects. That, for example, personally, in terms of my personal finance, none of this has cost me a cent. I mean, there's negligible impact on my personal finances, partly because of the healthcare system we have, but also because I have a good union job, and I'm protected through my union for leave, time off work and stuff like that. So And that's, in the United States, that's like three times less likely. Three times your union coverage is three times lower. So that's a huge advantage if you're unionized, right? So that's all those aspects of our society are great, to the extent that they exist, right? But and at the same time, we have this our system is penetrated with Zionists. I mean, right at the very top are all our political parties in Canada are unbelievably Zionist. Just they're competing to see who can be the most Zionist, the most supportive of the Israeli genocide. So it's kind of a something's got to give. I don't think it's sustainable, to have progress in these areas, and have these and have an establishment that's pro genocide. I don't think how those things can coexist. One's got to give at the expense of the other, and yeah, it was pretty bad. But very life consider myself lucky. I consider myself lucky, and again, you can't help but think about these horrible things that we support. At the same time, we have aspects of our country that are kind of functioning in a civilized way, especially compared to the United States. That's a comparison that Canadians make that helps us feel kind of better about ourselves. We compare ourselves to the United States, or at least we're not there yet. Although Trump's gonna probably take us over. But yeah. Anyway, so yeah, yeah, it's pretty amazing to go through that. And anyone who goes to the hospital should be thinking about that. And if you ever have any experience with the healthcare system, that's the kind of thing you should be thinking about. Um, yeah, so yeah, I wish I wish I had a better, a more upbeat take in a way. Like I don't know how we can keep going like this. Uh, you know, it seems like the forces of Zionists, to me, they seem to be kind of on a roll, especially with the collapse of Syria. So and on a positive note, globally, I'm glad. I was very worried about the inauguration of President Maduro in Venezuela, because they're so emboldened right now. To go for everything. To think, we've taken out the leadership of Hezbollah, or we've taken out Assad. So I think there was this feeling that they're very emboldened to do things like, maybe, let's just overthrow Maduro right away. Let's just go for it. And it was nice to see that the inauguration of Maduro went off without a hitch, and the opposition basically humiliated themselves, uh, got nobody out in the street and everything. So that's kind of where my head is at right now. Besides just trying to follow doctor's orders and hope for better luck in the future.
Well, Joe, I think we are happy to see you, and that's any take from you is a good take, because we missed you, we missed your voice on the show, and listeners missed you. So it's good to have you back, and yeah, and Matteo, it's been a while for you too. We've missed like lots of comments on the YouTube as well. Say, where's our sweet Italian boy? Where did he go? He wandered off in the hills to collect wild rapini or something and got lost.
I'm good. I miss you guys. And now it was wonderful to hear you, Joe. I had read the Substack already. All my love to you, of course, and my solidarity in this, journey of recovery that you're facing. Must have been. I don't know how to. I can't even imagine it, but it must have been unpleasant. But yeah. Uh, well, I just came to say to say everybody that I'm fine. I'm being held in the Evin prison in Iran, just eating lentils and meat every day. Guys, life is yeah, it's taken its turns. I really wanted to join you because very soon we're gonna have a time difference. It's not going to allow me to be a tanky in a therapy with you guys. So that it's gonna make
Oh,
things.
geez, I never considered that. We're gonna have to change the time of our show.
I I don't know if there's a way to combine everything now. Too many continents at once. we're gonna need to have like different meetings, like different sessions. No, but said that, I think I have honestly been struggling a lot to digest what Joe was mentioning, which is the fall of Syria. There are still many unresolved questions that I keep struggling with. The pace at which Syria has fallen, the fate of the president Bashar al-Assad, what happened to the army, and so on and so forth. And I'm trying to keep a positive, attitude towards life, but I feel that there is a pile of excrement just waiting to collapse over my shoulders. I can smell it, but it hasn't collapsed yet. So, it's constantly trying to run away from this smell. And I think I'm just going to stop there because, I need to have Sina's energy to bring me up again.
Yes, well, I hear you both. We have a lot to talk about. It's been a while. A lot of listeners reached out to me demanding Tankie Therapy, threatening regime change if we didn't provide it. So let's check in with you, Alex. How are you doing, man?
Similar, and I'm really glad to be on with Joe. Joe, that was your Substack was an amazing. I had a very emotional reaction to your Substack, and I'm so glad that you're back on and that you're doing better. It's just dark times. It's there's two things. One, the normalization of genocide that seems to have happened in the last couple of months. And we've talked about this for a while now, but it does feel that what is happening in Gaza has become completely normalized in the West, at least at certain levels, certain parts of society. And if you speak up against it, the repercussions are becoming, more dire, more severe, as we just saw with Professor Frankel at Columbia. And we're going to continue to see institutions that have diametrically opposed interests to, I think, the majority of people in the West who have expressed solidarity with Palestine. And we're going to continue to see, more bearing of the fangs because they've lost, I think, the ideological battle for in this situation. So universities, political institutions, the recourse that they have is the baton. It's the firing. It's the removing from positions. It's, suspending students like at NYU for over a year for engaging in peaceful protests, while universities like MIT are actually working with the IDF to develop more genocidal technology. That's cool. That's fine. So that's also, as a historian, I think I find way too much comfort in history. And part of me, as I've said before on the show, is that in a certain way, this is what the West has always been. This is what it took to create it. This is what it takes to operate. We just happen to watch this type of genocide in real time. And also in an era where mass politics in the West seemingly has no effect, that also makes that combination even more toxic. Millions of people can go out on the street week in, week out, and it has no impact politically, or the political impact is very limited to a certain extent, or the political impact as interpreted by elites is negated, right? Like Gaza played a big role in costing the genocidal democracy election, but they'll never admit it. They'll never acknowledge that. They can't. They can't even acknowledge, like Anthony Blinken in one of these insane exit interviews, that there is a genocide going on. And part of it is they can't, right? Because for them to admit it would be to admit complicity and the violation of U.S. law and the violation of different international laws as well. So they still fasten, they're just still holding on to this so-called rules-based international order that we know that since the 19th century has been based on colonialism, colonial expansion, and genocide of peoples in the global South and indigenous peoples within the global North as well. And the second part is similar. The second thing I'll just say is something that Matteo, our Italian boy, our Maradona fan comrade, said, is that it's so I guess cliche at this point, but the gaslighting of over the last 15 months, where we in the West have been told that the good guys are the bad guys and the bad guys are the good guys. And seeing this process happen all at the same time, right? Like to see Palestinian resistance in Gaza depicted as the antithesis of civilization, but Nazis that were incorporated into the Ukrainian state are seen as the bastions of Western civilization. And then what happened in Syria is just like to see it happen in real time so quickly is still, I'm still spinning. I'm still spinning that we have a guy who was part of ISIS and part of Al Qaeda now is the unelected leader of Syria, and we're supposed to be fine with that because he wears a suit, because he he trimmed his beard, he got a haircut, he got the hair transplant Turkish treatment, and now he's like a legit like leader that is unelected, will be in power for 3 or 4 years, as he himself said, without elections, and we're completely fine with that. And he's the good guy, though. He's the one who's the guy who's allowing his country to be carved up by 2 or 3 different entities. He's the good guy. And we're supposed to ignore some of the horrific things that are happening on the ground that are not being reported because this is all for, I don't know, some sort of Syrian freedom that seems very opaque at this point, right? And we're not seeing a lot of the blood. So I think the challenge now is to I don't know, the challenge, it's always been the challenge, but I think the challenge even more so today is to remain, to try to find that hope, to try to hold on to some sort of liberatory horizon, because it's in these moments where it's the time when we have to do it and we have to express it and we have to be in solidarity with folks who share a similar horizon for something better, even, no matter how difficult it is. And at least I know you guys in our little group helps me get through it. But it's not easy. It's not easy when, a city that I lived in for a bunch of years, like Los Angeles, is up in fire as well. And then you see 800 of those firefighters are incarcerated firefighters that get paid like a pittance a day. 30 of them are actually adolescents. They're in juvenile delinquent halls who then have been trained to become firefighters. I mean, it's like a form of slavery, right? That's the very law that enables that is a slavery clause, right? So, yeah, but solidarity is more important than ever at this point. I mean, that's what's going to get us through these particular dark moments.
Yeah, God, so many things. Joe, I'm so grateful that you're okay and that your doctors took your health seriously, and that you weren't afraid to go to the emergency room because of fear of bankruptcy and medical debt. That we all have that fear here in the States. And so I'm just very, very grateful. And Matteo, sono così felice di vederti, comrade. It's been way too long. So much. This week, like the first this 12 days of this month has just been like a boiling pot of all the things. The 15 months now of this genocide, the abduction and disappearance, and now torture of Dr. Hussam Abu Safia at Kamal Adwan Hospital. That happened actually December 27th, so right before the new year. But now for the last, 2, almost 3 weeks, he's been completely disappeared. His mother had a heart attack, and his patients and his colleagues, people in the community. I just think so much of the care that these doctors have given their communities, and how, in a different context, Dr. Hussam, could have been working at the hospital in Ottawa, helping Joe or helping, one of Joe's kids. He's a pediatrician by trade. It all just feels completely, everything like all at once. There's so much all at once. The fires in LA, my in-laws luckily they're safe, but there were fires within like half a mile from their house on either side. And we convinced them to take, things that they needed in a duffel bag and drive up to the Bay Area here. And, people that we know have had their entire homes destroyed, and looking at the way that incarcerated people are enslaved to fight these fires that are fueled by capitalism and by the loss of the deliberate destruction of infrastructure. These just the complete collapse of all like safety nets because of certain billionaires who want to take over all the water resources in this state. I'm thinking about the Resnicks, these billionaires who own something like 60% of California's public water resources. 60%. They own these mass industrial agricultural farms that produce pistachios and pomegranates and whatever. And they just suck up all the water, and they employ, migrant labor workers, which is another form of slavery itself here in the state. They are diehard, Israel supporters, of course, because of course they are. So they're making a profit from the destruction, of Palestine and from California. And I just, I don't know. I just feel like I'm always at the verge of complete collapse myself. There's just so much to hold on to, and so much to try and understand and to process. And this, this clarity that we've been talking about for the last 15 months of how this genocide, how this imperial structure works as the most anti-human force on earth in all of human history. And seeing it converge in these just completely stark ways. I was really lucky. I was hanging out with Taylor Miller the other day, who's, good friend of Alex, good friend of East is a Podcast. And this was the day before the fires. This was, I don't know, last Tuesday or something. And we were talking about just these, the vehicles of control, the vehicles of genocide, of gentrification. We were talking about a literal vehicle, a bulldozer drove by us as we were having coffee. And it was it said graffiti abatement program, which we know is just kind of a euphemism for actual homeless encampment destruction. You don't need a bulldozer to abate graffiti, right? And so these vehicles come in and they sweep people's lives, their entire universes that have been discarded already by this society and by this state and by these disgusting politicians. And they destroy over and over again people's lives and people's communities, and don't give any sort of security in place of that destruction, obviously. And of course, we think about the bulldozers that destroy Palestinians' homes and all of those vehicles of destruction, the unwanted, the extra people that are in the way of white supremacy and the colonial Zionist fantasies. And we think about, I saw then the next day there were these massive bulldozers, ramming through the streets of the Pacific Palisades, because people had, when they were fleeing their homes, they had to run really quickly, and they left their cars on the road. So it was just a literal parking lot, and they didn't leave the keys, obviously, because why would you think to leave the keys? You're running for your life. And and of course, all, most of the cars that I was seeing is like Teslas and Ferrari. I mean, this is Pacific Palisades. It's like, where all the top A-list celebrities, the monarchy of this fucking garbage country live. And to see these also massive bulldozers, like having to, push these cars out of the way so that these incarcerated firefighters can get to the smoldering wreckage of it. Just like all, I mean, it just kind of, I like, enough. I'm like, it's too clear. Like I feel like I'm in some movie where I've like absorbed all the clarity that I need. All of these things happening all at once. There was a fucking earthquake just like half an hour ago here, in the Bay Area. And like, I'm just like, fuck it. Like, yes. All right. Just take it. Like, take it all. I am like, I'm so done. Everything is, it just, yeah. So again, I just feel like I'm at this like constant breaking point. I am so overwhelmed with grief and anger at what Palestinians are having to endure still, and it's just, as you said, Alex, is becoming normalized, and like it's not even in the headlines of the mainstream media, who didn't give a fuck anyway about Palestine. Like, I'm just like, I don't know where this goes. I don't know where I'm going. I feel like I just want to like crawl under my bed and take a nap for, weeks. Or the long nap sometimes. But we have obligations to ourselves and each other and our family and all of those things. And what really stands out to me, and this is what Taylor and I were talking about at the very end too of our wonderful coffee date, was that it really just, all that matters is community. All that matters is each other. And all that matters is making connections with people that we love and deepening that love and that trust and that bond. And we cannot isolate. We cannot let the entity outlive us. We have to, whether that entity is the fake state of Israel, or whether it's the US, or Canada, or whatever entity, or Italy even. we can't relent. We can't give up. We have each other, and that's what's going to get us through.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Nora, and I feel, I'm hearing all of you, and I'm feeling a lot of the same. This last, 6 weeks, probably since like December, early December, where, and then even prior to all that, with the assassination of Syed Nasrallah, and the very calculated intensification of the genocidal Zionist bombing of Gaza, and also the wholesale, completely not coincidental silence, like incredibly wave of silence on the media class here, in linking arms and keeping it completely on lockdown, right? Like we cannot say this enough, that our primarily liberal media class is a key pillar of this genocide, simply through their active conspiracy of silence. And on top of that, using, and with the combined action of like Zionist brown shirts and bureaucracy, agents in various media institutions, helping pinpoint individual, rabble rousers and troublemakers to take them out one by one. And that is something that our media class has refused to discuss, has refused to hide, probably for a reason, probably because they feel like, oh, we'll be on the crosshair too. But yeah, this was, this would be, I always say this, but the lessons that we learned in all this time, one of the lessons is that we are surrounded by a generation of rank cowardice in our, not just our media class, but our intellectual class, our cultural apparatus, our so-called, thinker, whatever, policy, whatever, every overlay, like everything about our fraudulent society is geared towards and almost like what was it, like Bugsy Berkeley or whatever, that guy who did all the Hollywood things, like they're all just celebrating, like jumping into a pool in unison, watching the most violent industrial bombing campaign combined with some of the most violent attacks on human institutions done out in the open, recorded by the actors themselves. And yet we're supposed to like keep silent, and you're supposed to not question it. And in the midst of all this, then they, for about a week and a half, they started a mass pantomime. They revived a mass pantomime of surrounding Syrian revolutionaries, people calling this the, I mean, there are people out there who have respectable, who we know, who talk about the Syrian revolution. And it's like, bro, no revolution of the world. This is a revolution that was paid for by 2 trillion US dollars, like given by the most counter-revolutionary in the forces. That's the revolution you want to be part of? Like that one? And, you know, like the mass psychosis. I'll tell you a story by way of my mental state. I was asked to do a show, a public radio show, and somewhere, I don't remember where. And I was like, whatever, sure. Anybody freaky enough to ask me to like do their podcast, I'll do it. And I did it, and it was okay. Syria came up. I of course shocked her. She had never heard some of the things that I had said, and you know, I made it clear. I said, you know, like what you have I said at one point, I said, you know, you have an impression about this man, you know, Bashar al-Assad, and it just, and I know that it happens to coincide with like everything that people expect from leaders in our part of the world who don't do U.S. bidding. And I think you can recognize that. I mean, this is me talking to the host, but I said to her that, you know, like that Bashar al-Assad is a human rights hero compared to like any of our leaders over here, right? And that's like a simple fact that like even if everything they said about him was true. But I realized at the end of it, she sort of said to me, oh, you know, actually like literally like after like the first, she's like, oh, I'm gonna put like a disclaimer on this episode. And I like laughed. I was like, like that was my first initial thing. And I sat on it for like the next 12 hours or so, and I slept on it. And in the morning I was like, you know, I'm not going to do this. I wrote to her, I said, I'm withdrawing my show. I'm not going to let you treat me like I'm some sort of political leper because I don't go along with the dirtiest war, the fiction surrounding like the dirtiest war ever conceived. And it's beneath my dignity to like give my voice to your show. And she kept insisting that, oh, I've never done this before. And I was like, yes, that's what makes it so insulting, that you're singling me out because something I'm saying is, to invoke a racist phrase, beyond the pale. And this is when I realized that like the community of our show are people who get treated like this in articulating some of the things we say. And so they come to our show for a kind of community of like, you know, fellow travelers. And, you know, that's what this show has been for us. We know the story by now. It was a kind of half joke that we started in a chat about, you know, we need like a group therapy show. And here we are like 15 months later, thousands of people listen to this, thousands more watch it. I feel proud of the work we've done to talk about this, to like be one of the, like literally guys, we are an army of like maybe 600-700 media people around the world in any language, by the way, that's like including Arabic, basically, who are like actively covering this stuff. Like we are like, this is true David and Goliath media warfare. Like we're a speck of dust compared to what they have. And like, does anybody do it better than Electronic Intifada? Does anybody even have news that comes close to what EI pulls off with like a team of less than 10 people, I think. Less than 8 people, I think. It's like fewer. It's not even, yeah. It's like it's barely 5, somewhere between 5 and 8.
We're about 10. We're about 10 now.
10. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, if that doesn't tell you if that's not a metaphor for Palestinian resistance itself, like, I don't know what to tell you, because as sad as it is for us, and this is by design, as brutal as it is for us to watch, that Palestinian resistance has not died down, that in the midst of the most violent bombing and genocidal run of soldiers, that Israeli soldiers still have their lives ended in like Looney Tunes-esque scenarios, you know, which like, it could have soundtracks of like bombs. Like you see the videos of it too, that like, you know, I mean, the videos have slowed a little bit, but I think that maybe has to do with editing staff. I don't know the reason for that. John will probably know. John watches them religiously. John could probably tell us. I mean, at the same time, though, is that I want to stress this is that, like, forget, like, let's put aside Gaza resistance. The Yemenis have not stopped. The Yemenis have not stopped resisting. The Iraqis have been curiously silent in all of this, like the Iraqi resistance forces. That, like, that's something I've wondered about. And of course, the Iranian front is still open. True Promise 3 is something that has been voted on, that the Iranian state has promised multiple times its speakers. People are convinced that it's not going to happen. I know, like, resistoids who are saying it too. So I guess this is one of those instances where it's like behooves us to remember that we live in an alienated, hyper individualistic, and also like a kind of hall of mirrors media sphere where like an unlimited number of bad actors have basically can print their own money to pay an army of media goons and to use and to multiply that power through social media companies, which all serve their agenda to, like, represent a certain situation on this world. And so we know they can do that in enemy countries, but also they can also create this illusion for their allied countries that, like, everything's going fine, everything's great. But, like, the place to understand this war is, like, go to the Arabic sources. I mean, Resistance News Network is coming back online, which is a good thing. The Telegram channel that we all love and know, they're coming back online, and they've been reporting. And the things you have to follow in Hebrew media, it's not good. It's not going well for the Israelis. This is the people look at the numbers and they say, oh, the Hezbollah lost thousands, and this was this, and they've lost hundreds, and how can you compare them? And therefore they're winning. And this is not like an equation. Like, states go into wars with goals, and Israel has accomplished nothing, and they've harmed their economy, they've harmed their society, they've chased hundreds of thousands of their own citizens out of the country, proving that their own sense of self and their own, like, that the moment some trouble shows up, a huge numbers of them leave, which makes you wonder about what if real trouble happens for them, like what kind of sustainable. And then the other thing is, like, what, like, can the US, with Trump coming in, who is a actual psychopath clown, who wants to pick wars everywhere he goes, who wants to, like, invade Canada, which is, like, the funniest thing in the world. I mean, maybe it won't be funny if it actually happens to me, but which is, like, a funny thing to say. I always joked about this, that, if things go really bad for the US, they're going to invade, take Quebec and take Alberta. They're going to do that. But I think it's just, they'd rather the whole thing, and who knows. But at this rate, though, is that I think generally, beyond trying to read the, like, the bird droppings of Trump's brain, like, you have to, oh my God, you're bringing a cat into this. You can't do that to us. Who is this angel? There's a cat. There's a kid here. Oh,
This
my
is
God.
Kassam.
Oh my God,
Yes,
Kassam.
this is Kassam, or we call him Sammy for short. He's perfect.
Oh my God, he's tiny.
He's tiny. Look at him. Look at him.
This is good. This is good for the soul. Sorry,
It's very
audio
good.
listeners.
Sorry.
Audio listeners. Maybe
I
we'll
have
just
the
use
most
a picture of
perfect
the cat.
kitten. Yeah.
Send me the picture of the cat
Okay.
for the episode art, and so they'll get a taste of how cute
Look
this
at his
thing is.
face. Look at his
And I
face.
think, if anything, this cat is a metaphor for something good. That we have beauty and kittens on our side,
That's right.
and they are
That's
monsters.
Right. Yeah.
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 I guess we need to talk about the thing that came up this week, obviously for me, and literally this week, is the LA fires. I lived in part of the area that is now being burned. I have friends who have evacuated. We were I was checking in on them. So it's interesting to think about how Americans are going to confront this kind of displacement at, like, a large scale. Like, right now it's like 100,000. It won't stay that number as people get back in, but it will be like there's tens of thousands of homes that have been destroyed. American insurance companies will not pay them. They will not pay them at all. There will have to be some sort of immense wrangling to get some kind of compensation, and it won't be anything like they got for the value of the houses, which, because it was California, were valued really, really high because of where they were. And so it's interesting to think about.
Well, it'll be like an apartheid sort of, economic system where the fancy people up in the Palisades with the, $10 million homes will get compensated for sure. But the working class folks in Altadena and Pasadena, and in the flats near the Palisades, and in these other, like, northern San Fernando Valley areas, it's going to be a generational disaster. And they're already, like, these vultures, these like speculators, these real estate developers that are coming in and trying to like buy up the burned property. It's the convergence of all the things that we despise and that are like the most destructive values of this like sick society. It's going to be enormous.
There's going to be a real struggle. I mean, the impulse is going to be to shock doctrine it. So real estate developers and their political allies are viewing this as like a business opportunity. And it's going to be interesting to see how community organizations in places like Altadena, where it was a historically Black neighborhood community, actual community,
artists who cultural workers and people have been
like
there
what
for
they'll
generations.
do, because Milton Friedman's last piece of writing was an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal in 2005, where he advocated after Katrina, he's like, this is the perfect time to privatize all of New Orleans public education. That was like that. And they did that. That monster's final piece of writing was to like, let's privatize public education in New Orleans. And that's exactly what happened. So it's going to be interesting in LA to see the power of more political and community groups, because what we've seen is the state does what the state does in the place like California. The police are going out and attacking people who are actually doing good work. And who the people and the organizations who are helping are like community groups and mutual aid organizations. So there's going to be an interesting struggle. Also the thing, like, these are still ongoing. Like, I just saw that the fire spread to like Brentford. Like there's a real possibility that this thing makes it into LA. And if that happens, that's just catastrophic. And this is something like, if I know people have been sharing Mike Davis's article a lot, The Case for Letting Malibu Burn. But he has other really good stuff, like The City of Quartz is like my favorite history of LA, and Ecology of Fear, where like he talks about this kind of stuff. Like the idea, like now it seems possible, right? The idea of a fire that starts in an area where people were not supposed to live in, but were only living there because in the 1920s, these rich people pushed their political allies to let them develop and zone areas that are fire friendly, to put it that way. So like this thing is still ongoing too. That's a crazy thing to watch it. And it's tragic. I lived in LA for a bunch of years too, for when I went to graduate school. And as a kid, I spent a lot of weekends in LA for soccer, and it's heartbreaking, man. It's heartbreaking to know people who have suffered this. It's heartbreaking to see these communities like Altadena suffer what they're suffering and receive less attention than these rich assholes in the Pacific Palisades, right? Like, but then you see the connection to other places in the world. It's like, it's the settler colonial angle, and the fact that these gringos in the 1920s, rich gringos in the 1920s were developing areas that they were not supposed to live in. There's a long history of settler colonialism in LA, displacing indigenous peoples. It's apparently always bad. Settler colonialism, always bad, always genocidal, always destructive. And that's a story in here too.
Like, here's my question though. Americans do not, especially the kinds of Americans who live in the Palisades. Sorry, I've been to the Palisades a lot. These are not of the earth kind of people. Let me tell you, these are rich people who have multiple homes, oftentimes have multiple homes, or they're middle-class people who bought it a long time ago, who then became rich people because California land does that. And like so much wealth is so much like paper wealth is trapped in just that one corner of LA, which is now like literally dust and ashes. And my question is, Americans do not have the emotional, let's say, maturity to connect and overcome disasters like this at this scale in a setting. Let me put it this way. Let me finish the sentence. American nationalists who are listening, what are you even doing here? But in a setting like LA, you cannot, I don't think it's I think there's so many competing like I don't know how to describe it, but it will create the difficulty of their situation will rapidly increase as the time they spend outside of the homes. And where are those people going to go? Those people, okay, yeah, they evacuated who left because of fires. Like when this finishes, which is not even over, they have 60-mile-an-hour winds coming Monday, Tuesday, and that's like with the red flag warning. I actually escaped. I had to flee from a fire once. The fire didn't come to us, but we stayed in the Palisades, and it was literally raining ash. And I was like, "Oh, it's this." And I was like doing the meme of like the dog and the fire. I was like, "This is nice. This is nice. This is fine." And I just don't know where all those people who have no homes, who have nothing, who have no clothes. Like it's okay. It feels good right now. Like I've been watching KTLA 5 for like days now, and yeah, this is you can do the immediate thing of, okay, let's get our stuff, but like you need a deep well of community support, and like I don't know, it requires a different genome than American society has. Frankly, it's not in the American, especially California, especially Southern California, especially like West End rich people, Malibu. Okay, Altadena, I'd believe it because Altadena has that village feel, those foothill community kind of vibe, but maybe Topanga, I'll believe it, but Topanga's full of rich people, like those old boomers who kind of made Topanga the brand. A lot of them, I mean, some of them are there, and actually some of them are my friends, and I've been texting, but a lot of them die off. They sell their land, like it's new people coming in, people who don't, like who haven't been there, who didn't grant, like land is very valuable in LA and in California in general. But its value is based on the ability to extract value from it. And if you can't build on it, if you can't put up a stupid stucco tomb and like a tacky fucking castle to live in, to rent out to other goons on your Airbnb site, like if you can't do that, then what is it for? Like then the hedge funds will come in, which is probably what's going to happen.
They already have. No, yeah, and this cycle is going to continue, right? Because this is going to take years, because then what happens?
It'll take like a year to clean.
No, but even then, okay, so now all the mountains are like bare, and then it rains, and now we're going to have mudslide. I mean, this is like Mike Davis's stuff, right? This is all.
But this is what indigenous communities in Southern California have always said about the way that the settlers have built their cities.
They knew
completely
what the Santa Ana winds do, right? I mean, and anyone who's lived in LA, those winds are awful. Like just on an individual level, right? They're like they're just dry. They're just like uncomfortable to be around. But it lays bare, Sina, like the rickety structure of capital accumulation on which the state rests on, right? I mean, this is like, and the Democrats are going to pay for it politically, because they apparently, what I've read is that there was programs that were supposed to have been put into place about like making these areas less susceptible to fire, that the state and like city municipal governments just did not follow through with for whatever reason. So there's also the level of just what people in political power think their job is. And someone like Newsom spends, like the governor of California, what he sees as his role as a governor, like to actually help people in the state, or to just take stupid pictures of himself at fancy restaurants pretending to read To Kill a Mockingbird, or to travel around the state, or the country, trying to convince people that he's going to be a presidential candidate. The case with the Los Angeles mayor, Karen Bass, right? Who, like, if you look at her personal history, like she's one of these people who was like a radical in the 60s, was part of the Venceremos brigades, and then, ends up in the fucking California Democrats. There's so many people like that. But, she's gotten a lot of blame placed on her for this situation. We're getting way too California specific here. Anyway, the whole political structure in LA is like a powerful city council and a weak mayor. And it's like these different parts of LA that wield a lot of political power. And obviously the ones with money, the ones with capital, are the ones that have influence. So this struggle is going to take forever. Like, and I don't think that we should lose sight of the fact that these fires are still super active. Like, this is not anywhere near like done. And that's extremely tragic. I mean, that's the part that I can't wrap my mind around.
that the U.S. ruling class, more than Canadians, more than Europeans, they really fear their own population, and they really don't want them to be secure. They want them to be afraid of disaster, and that's I think drives a lot of the not wanting to help. When you see Trump telling us you have to spend more on your military or we'll take you over, it's kind of contradictory. It should be the opposite, right? If we're spending more on our military, that should be a threat to the U.S. But our military is so taken over already, so integrated that they see that as actually good for them, right? It's like that's the one aspect of our society or system that they have control over so completely, so integrated with the military that Canada spending more on its military is actually going to bring it, make it more like the U.S. But I think the real message is I think they want the Canadians to be the same way. I don't think they want Canada to have an alternative in any small way to the U.S. They want them to basically want to fuck up everything that has any semblance of humanity in our system at all. They want it gone. They want us to be more like the U.S. They would like their model of keep your population afraid, keep them unemployed, keep them in fear of disaster. That if there's going to be a disaster, government's not going to help you. They're going to just sit back and let it. So I think that they rely more on fear because they're the leading imperial state. They always feared. I think I wrote about this, the Powell Menu, that by the 70s they already feared that the social reforms had gotten way out of control and people were getting too sure of themselves, too confident, and they wanted to undermine that. So I feel that seems to be the mentality in the U.S. and they want it to spread. So I think Trump's message to the Europeans, and that's basically, he says, you guys should be more like us. Enough of this coddling your own people. I want you to be more like us. So that's how I see where Trump's going with that.
Matteo, it's been a while since we've heard from you.
Well, I was listening because honestly, I didn't know the in and outs of what was happening in the U.S. And I kept thinking of freedom, sense that you guys were talking about speculating, they're gonna come make profit. This is America. I mean, it's like it's beautiful to hear this. It's like it's just. I mean, I'm not saying there's a human side, of course. I mean, nobody wants people to lose their houses and everything, but this is, it's a country that's, sets its own requirements for disaster, and very well. But at the same time, the appeal that this kind of American dream and American notion of freedom has for the entire world is just sickening. And it keeps doing the rounds all over the world, like when you think about the kind of political agendas that drive movements like the Syrian revolution or the Ukrainian freedom fighters all over the world, they all, orbit culturally around the notion of freedom and democracy that comes exactly from this place. So yeah, it's a sickening word, it's kind of revolting, and it makes you think, when does the time that, is set for people to paraglide? And I don't know, it's just, I hope, we will all find out that soon, even ourselves.
Yeah, that's really important because it goes back to what Sina said about cowardice. You see that everywhere. You talk about paragliding. People aren't even just willing to call genocide a genocide. That's far short of paragliding. That's just telling the truth. I mean, they can't even reach that. Never mind paragliding. It's just the cowardice, just over.
Like, what was the good of this freedom? What's the point? If you have all this freedom and you can say anything you want, like I could literally eat a Tide Pod, record myself, and sell it to people online, that video. You get my point. Like, you can do anything in the US except that thing, except questioning that thing, except, like daring to boycott Israel. Like, they make boycotting illegal. It's a crazed environment where people have just assumed that it's beyond McCarthyism. Like, this beyond McCarthyism at this point. This is nothing like this. The McCarthyism doesn't even hold a candle to what Zionists are doing now. And because partly the scale of what they're working to hide through intimidating, people of, like people of the media class or whatever, through that intimidation. Like they're trying to hide one of the most violent active genocides of all time that they've recorded, that they've archived for the rest of our thing. I mean, yeah, this is we have to find an idiom to talk about this, because every episode it feels like we run into this problem. Like, what do you even say? What do you even say? How do you describe this thing that goes beyond description? Like, how do you even say the words Israel ran over a pregnant woman with a tank multiple times so that the fetus came out of her body? Like, how do you say that to people and they listen? And this is like 57 minutes into the episode. A lot of people will have been gone, but like the few, like people who have left to this, like, how do you say that out loud to yourself? And, like, and then let alone when you try to say it out loud to other people and you have the courage to say it to other people, they come in and try to fire you. I'm lucky that I, in fact, am rewarded for my opinions and paid for them. Whereas, like a lot of you work in institutions and you probably have to deal with, internal enemies, like tracking your views and trying to terrorize you. But ultimately, like, none of you are moral cowards. I would never, like, we are all, it's a simple thing. Like, you see something going on that is this bad to humanity, like literally the worst crime you can do in history. And people are just sitting pretty, like, going to do their Critics' Choice Award thank you list and like go about their day. And yeah, I mean, a real can of worms. And I'm going to open now, but I'm not going to really open it. But Nora, this is for our next episode on philo-Semitism. Is what do you do with Holocaust education now after this? Like, what do you, like, if I was a parent, I would tell my kid, like, when are you doing Holocaust education? Because I'm not letting my kid do that. I'm not I'm not
No,
I'm not going to
I'm
participate in an economy where certain lives are placed across others. And I would suggest parents, if you're listening to this, you consider organizing boycotts of your schools, because clearly our teacherly class individuals, yes, they know, but I know this personally. I have relatives who are teachers, and they're telling me there's terror in these school boards like anywhere else. But
yeah, no, I'm going to be one of those parents. And I think, especially those of us who have, a Jewish background, I think this is one thing where you can use, your godforsaken privilege in this like disgusting society to, to try and put a wrench in that cycle. As I can do the as a Jew thing. As a Jew, I'm not going to let my Jewish son participate in European Holocaust education if it's not put within the context of the Holocaust that is being carried out by those Europeans, settlers on Palestinians. And so I think this could be an opportunity for some revolt within our school districts if people are willing to fight. I don't know. I hope people are willing to fight. I feel like in these pockets, in the San Francisco Bay Area or in, maybe in LA, at least here in California, I feel like people are making these connections and are going to be willing to stand up and challenge these norms, whether it's like prioritizing the rich people's second homes in the Palisades over the working class folks in Altadena, or whether it's prioritizing the suffering of the Jewish people in the European Nazi Holocaust over the active Holocaust of the Palestinians by European settlers. I think this is a time of deep convergence and of deep conjuncture and clarity. And I think that in 2025 we're only going to have to be sharpened in our analysis and in our rebellion against these norms, against these these dictates on our life and our children's lives and the lives of our loved ones in our communities. And so I don't know.
Oh, guys, we're about to hit an hour. Alex had to go. He was watching some. He's watching some kids' sports. His own kids, not just like random kids. That would be weird. We have a strange. I find that we have a strange job in life, like all of us. I mean, you guys have jobs. You know, I have this job, but you guys come and do this job with me. Although Nora, this is part of your job too. This is a different story. But you know, we talk about this. We talk about this stuff that's terrible to talk about. It's not like. Which is, you know, podcasting. A lot of podcasts are fun, and people listen to them because they're fun, and they're like, you know, they're your friends who are at the table, but you just can't see them. You know, like they're just on a speaker somewhere. And I'd like to think that we have cultivated at least some kind of I don't know what the word is, not community, but some kind of listenership where, you know, if you appreciate the kind of analysis you get on this show, then we're happy to give it to you. And we're happy that there are people out there in our sick and depraved society who are honest enough to go seeking out like more information about this genocide, because it would be easy to just go on with your life. And even if you feel bad about it, it's easy. It's just the thing to do. Most of my people are doing it. I know most of my friends. Most of my, you know, like friends from my normal life, but we're here and we have to stay here and we're going to stay here and we will be here. And we have to keep talking about this genocide, and we will never let these scum, evil monsters get away with it. We will never let them have monopoly narrative control. So that means we just have to keep doing this. We have to keep meeting here. I'll see you guys here until the end of time. We'll be here. It'll be blue Blade Runner style, you know, orange skies on the outside. We're like, welcome to Tankie Therapy, post-apocalypse edition. How is that yellow sunrise, folks?
So
Did you eat your slugs today, issued to you by the colonial state?
Matteo's going to be the only one like living a happy, you know, relatively safe and you know, meaningful, I think, future
In Sicily.
Yeah.
Guys, I was thinking about that. I mean, it's like one of the reasons that this move is taking place, a move that is taking place towards China, is also the fact that you know, it has become so difficult to really imagine oneself with the ideas that I come with, like a package inside this continent. It's really difficult, becomes to articulate, to think constantly, to have to justify yourself, fear what you're saying, being terrorized, or on the brink of potentially losing a job. Of course, I mean, it's not going to be, you know, just going away is, you know, that's not the solution. But you realize that there is a way of organizing things, a way of dealing life, a different set of principles being proposed in a political structure in another part of the world that appears to be functioning and appealing. I mean, of course, this opens up a whole kind of worms now to talk about. But imagine, you know, if these fires would have happened in China, what the headlines would have been. You know, they're hiding the numbers, there is censorship, I don't know what. Just
Right. Instead, you know, like China is, I'm sure their firefighting capabilities and technologies are something that us here in California can only dream about. You know, but at what cost, really? At what cost?
But they also have something that we don't have here. They have a, I don't want to say like nationality. That's too simplistic. They have a sense. I don't know, man. Like they're a real country.
Yeah.
They're an actual real country.
Yeah.
They're not like not this stitched together continental settler colonial, you know, organism that has been unleashed that consumes resources everywhere it goes destructively at the cost of the land itself. Now, all the freaking psychos, liberals who listen to this show are going to be like, oh, China does the same thing. It's like, well, it's like I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to like answer these
No.
things because it's like it's a strange thing. It's like, no, the US is the US and it's a monstrous entity and we have to confront it. And everyone who wants to like sway you and to say like, what about, and the shirt tuggers, yeah, like just put them behind. I'm never speaking to those.
We're not dealing
I'm
with
never
them
doing,
in 2025.
Yeah, like I'm never doing that interview again. The next person who asks me for an interview, will be like, wait, what is your opinion on Syria?
Yeah.
That will be, if you don't pass the test, I'm not talking to you.
No. Yeah, it's a really good test.
If you have like the courage to point out very like honest things about like the lies of our political class, then okay, I can talk to you. But if you're gonna do this, if I'm gonna have to like bash my head up against the wall, like, yeah, we're past that time. But anyways, thank you guys. It's been an hour. Appreciate you guys. Joe, it's good to have you back. Matteo, it's good to have you back. We missed you guys, and thank you everyone. This was a good episode. We have to get back into the swing of things. It's been too long. And sorry guys. We'll be back sooner. Cheers, guys. Oh, we lost Joe. No, Joe. Good.